Morning, everybody, and welcome or afternoon, depending on where you are. I am Sean Smith, and this is Amplify Your MedTech Expertise. This is a very different webinar than my usual webinars. Why? Because I'm the one speaking. And so I have invited my colleague Dylan Brock and Jose Bohorquez, friend and client, who is here to keep me honest. And he will be joining us momentarily as soon as he gets out of traffic. In the meantime, um, let's get started. Um, if everybody wants to put in the chat where they're writing in from, that would be awesome. Just city, state, whatever, country. Um, and just to give us an idea of who's here. And let's see. I am going to start. So, what are we here to talk about today? The usual marketing channels are shifting. Let's talk about what that means. I like to start with where babies come from. And by babies, I mean new clients. Um, and I think where babies come from is pretty clear. Where new clients come from is a lot less clear. And so, what I've discovered over the course of my career is that a lot of the things that we're taught about marketing, about brand, about websites, about channels simply don't apply in B2B marketing, particularly in the medtech space, um, where we're dealing with high value client acquisition. We're not dealing with a large number of customers. A lot of the stuff that you hear about metrics, a lot of the stuff that you hear about analytics, a lot of the tools are too advanced. Um, and so I want to sort of strip away at that. I hear a lot of strange things. I hear things about well, marketing is really about touching people 7 times, and if you don't touch them 7 times, or just things that are heard and often repeated, but aren't necessarily true or applicable, particularly when you're talking about independent consultants, small consultancy groups, product and service providers in the medtech space that are seeking five, six, seven-figure contracts. And this is where I have focused for almost all of my career, as a marketer, as a journalist, and as an entrepreneur myself. So that's what we're here to talk about today and the shift that's happening in the marketplace right now. So what's changed? Well, there's a lot of economic uncertainty right now, and that's not good for anybody who is selling products or services. Um, Investments are down in startups across the board. Fewer startups are being funded in the medtech space, um, and that means there's less new business to go around. Um, I hear from clients inbound leads are slowing. A lot of the places that inbound leads used to come from have trickled or come to a stop. And there is every day new technologies, new platforms, new services, new ways of doing things, tools, and whatnot that are entering the marketplace. I have created a quick cheat sheet for a minimalist marketing stack that I view as essential, optional, and not recommended. Anybody that would like a copy of that cheat sheet, I'm happy to share it with you. Just put cheat sheet in the chat and we'll be sure to send it out after the call. Um, the Hi, Jose. Welcome. Um, Now that Jose is here, I would like to allow Dylan and Jose to introduce themselves before we go any further. And I just told them, Jose, I invited you. You're here to keep me honest.
Sure.
Uh, and
Yeah, and by the way, I was on, so I've heard it all. I was just on as a participant instead of a panelist. But my name is Jose Bohorquez. I'm president of a company called CyberMed. We provide cybersecurity services to medical device companies. And I've known Sean for probably about a year and a half now and been working with him for several months. So happy to participate.
Dylan.
Hi, I'm Dylan. I'm the executive editor of MedTech Leading Voice and director of client services there as well. I've been working with Sean for 8 years, and I've been in B2B marketing for high value contract organizations for 12 years. So just happy to come here and back Sean up, which is often my role.
Thank you both. Glad to have you, and feel free to interrupt me if you hear me telling something that isn't true or whatever you feel inspired to share with the group. I'm glad to have you here. Um, so what we're hearing from our clients, we used to get web leads every week. Now it's slowed to a trickle. We're doing all the right things, posting, emailing, but not much is landing. And I think this is a really common experience, particularly with people who are like, oh, I'm going to start posting on LinkedIn every day. And then they go out and they do it and they don't get the response that they want because they don't understand the algorithm and they don't understand the way that LinkedIn works best, and the types of content that work best. So they end up doing a lot of effort for very little return. And least of all, anything that leads to any sort of business. I don't know if Jose, you could talk about, what's changed with you, with LinkedIn.
Yeah, no, for me, I mean, what I found was you have to post high value content. There's just a lot of noise on LinkedIn, and nobody, really wants to hear about your day-to-day life. They want content that's going to be helpful. Um, and so yeah, so what I've learned is that if I have to spend time on it, I have to really be thoughtful about it. I have to think about something that's going to provide a lot of value to potential clients. And then once you post, you have to interact with people, right? If they have questions or comments, you've got to. So there's definitely things that you can do on LinkedIn for gaining greater traction when you post, but it takes effort.
Mhm. So one thing is that, we pull together a MedTech Leading Voice issue every week and we round up about 30 to 50 articles and then we distill that down to about 15 or so, 12 to 15 that are going to go in the weekly issue. And we put them in a spreadsheet and we see the numbers over and over and over and over again. And the people who are posting and the people who are posting things of value and what's getting shared and what's getting reposted. And we track all that and we look at it. But we have to do that manually because LinkedIn does not allow any automation with their platform. In fact, they will kick you off their platform if they discover that you're using automated tools. Um, and so that is an important thing. So what's all this costing? Well, particularly for small product and service providers, solo consultants, and small teams, it's a lot of time and effort spent, and it's a lot of time and effort that's spent on relatively unprofitable channels. It's a lot of activity, it's a lot of noise, and events are expensive. Um, Outreach is getting harder. In case you haven't noticed, the email inboxes are really good at separating out what you need to see and what you don't need to see. Um, and hiring help, whether as an FTE or um, outsourcing, without a clear sense of where you're going and what you're trying to achieve, can end up wasting a lot of money. And I think ultimately the biggest drain is really just the fatigue from the uncertainty. and the uncertainty about, am I going to have a steady pipeline of new customers? Am I going to keep my business sustainable? As a small business owner, I relate heavily to this, and I'll get to that more. Um, you know, Jose, if you could talk for a moment about hiring without clear ROI, you know, um,
Hiring what in particular, like
internal, external, what,
on the
you know,
sales or marketing side, you mean?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I know in the past I worked with kind of a B2B marketing firm, spending quite a bit of money, and I think over 6 months we literally got zero leads. Like not a single lead came through the efforts that were there. And one of the things that I learned is that you can have partners, you can have, like we work with Sean and Dylan as partners to our marketing efforts. But at the end of the day, somebody on the in-house team has to be willing to put in the effort because content is a major piece of what ultimately drives uh, engagement and leads. And it's not a thing that someone else can do for you completely. They can help make it efficient, but it's just not a thing, in my experience at least, that you can completely outsource.
Thank you. So then along came AI. I really, I've been posting about this and I've been talking about, our medtech experts in endangered species. And, it's a little bit of hyperbole, but at the same time, it really isn't. I think that a lot of knowledge is becoming commoditized thanks to large language models, and that the ability to answer questions that used to take a long time to answer can now be answered, with relative certainty. Very, very quickly, even complex questions. Um, and I think what that is doing is, well, we're seeing a lot more AI generated content flooding the market, and the AI generated content, where it's generated by the AI itself based on existing knowledge in the marketplace really isn't that helpful. It's a lot of noise. Whereas when the tools are used effectively in conjunction with an expert or with a group of experts, what you're able to do is you're able to use the large language model tools to hone the expertise. And Dylan, I'm gonna, let you talk about this a little bit and about the process that we have for extracting expertise from our clients and working with them to create a message which is uniquely their own rather than garbage noise.
Thanks, Sean. That's a really good point. I started using large language models in January of 2020, GPT-2. Ever since then, it's been a journey of figuring out how I can, enhance their own capabilities and make the voice more useful than anything that's going to come up straight out of just typing a question into it. And the thing that I found the most effective, especially in collaboration with Sean, is accessing the expertise and the voice of human beings and using the content that they generate out of their own brain to enrich the content that GPT or Claude or Gemini or Grok is spitting out. And we've been working with Jose in this capacity for some longer form content, and Jose also generates his own content. So in either case, you're seeing that the model doesn't work out of the box. You have to tune it, and the best way to tune it is by giving it a human perspective and knowledge that doesn't exist anywhere else but in your head.
Thank you. Do you want to launch the poll while I'm um, asking the first question, which is actually in the poll, which is, just how much do you hate marketing? And um, you know, my experience is that medtech experts, professionals, um, of every sort, they didn't become what they are in order to learn every single marketing trick in the book. Um, One of the things that I like to say is this ain't TikTok and you aren't a influencer. The difference between influencer and thought leader in a space like medtech is tremendous. And this idea of medtech experts dancing on TikTok strikes me as somewhat absurd, but I think that we're a little bit in danger of competing for who can um, attract the most attention and create the most gimmicky content rather than the most valuable content. And so, um, and yet what I've seen work consistently, as I said, through MedTech Leading Voice, is that the people that are consistently getting the most traction on LinkedIn are providing value. And what that means is that they're distilling complex subjects in their own words for an audience that is in need of that information, finds it valuable, and is happy to have it. Jose, you mentioned this earlier, the idea of sharing value. I think that a lot of people make the mistake of, oh, well, everything needs to have a call to action. Everything needs to, download this, get this, go here, sign up for this. And in my estimation, everybody knows you're selling. Everybody knows you're selling cybersecurity services. You don't need to say, hey, and I sell cybersecurity. My name's Jose and I sell cybersecurity services. That's just overkill, and once you switch into selling mode, people head for the hills, right? So the idea is, how do you attract business without, hitting people over the head with sales pitches, or as Dylan and I call it, pitch slapping?
I like that. Uh, no, I mean, you're 100% right. At the end of the day, if people know what you're doing, they know what you do, then they know to come to you. And what you're trying, I think, do in a way, I mean, the approach is to serve, right? To be not a seller but a server. So you're serving the community by giving them knowledge that is going to be helpful to them, and then they're going to think of you as a person who is helpful. And particularly in the consulting world where you're selling expertise, what better trait to have than to be someone who is known to be helpful. So yeah, if you're constantly out there hitting people upside the head about booking a call with you, or you know reaching out to you or whatever, then you start to fill a different place in their mind as somebody who's trying to sell them something instead of somebody who's trying to help them. So yeah, I think it's I mean, don't get me wrong, every once in a while it's okay. I like the idea of, it's almost like commercials, right? You can watch 30 minutes of TV and maybe like 5 or 7 minutes of it is commercials. But if they made it 25 minutes of a 30-minute TV show being commercials, then you're not gonna nobody's gonna watch, right? So I think you can throw CTAs in every once in a while, but you really have to overload on the providing value.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, Dylan, did you launch the poll?
I just chatted you. I don't, as a panelist, the functionality is not available to me, so you're gonna have to take the reins on this one.
Ah, got it. Well, that would be the more button, maybe. Polls and quizzes. Hope this is it.
Yep.
Okay. Um, and hopefully I can advance to the next slide without, there we go. So I don't know how many of you on this call know me, know what my story is, but I worked for 27 years, FTE, worked my way up from marketing manager at Thompson Publishing Group in Washington, D.C., publishing the Blue Binders, did direct mail and telemarketing year round. And this was, before the rise of the internet. And then went to FTC Reports, which was Elsevier Business Intelligence, became commercial director for the Gray Sheet and the medical device publications. Then left there, went to Infodesk, was VP of marketing there for, I don't know, 7 years, something like that. And then went to an AI startup after that, where I was chief marketing officer and wrote their go-to-market strategy in life sciences, helped them raise $10 million. So when in May of 2020, I decided to start my own business, what happened is it was the beginning of the pandemic, and I built my website, wrote a blog, hung out my shingle, started trying to post things about marketing on LinkedIn. And what I quickly discovered is that when I talk about marketing, my audience tunes out. My audience does not like the topic of marketing. They like the topic of medical devices, right? And so what I learned along the way was, instead of talking about me, instead of talking about the area that I'm an expert in, I need to be talking about them and what they care about. And along the way, I launched MedTech Leading Voice because I couldn't find 25 experts to follow on LinkedIn. If you try to figure out who the leading voices in medtech are, LinkedIn will not help you in any way whatsoever. So we pulled together the list manually, and we published 25 MedTech leading voices to follow in 2023, 2024, something like that. And and it was a big hit. And after that, we started publishing the weekly publication, which is just a roundup of um, you know, the best of LinkedIn every week. So along the way, this sort of snowballed, and I started meeting people, and I started getting access to experts, and I started webinars, and I started ebooks, and I started doing a lot of things that wouldn't have come to me had I just continued to post about, oh, this is what I do, and this is who I am. And that has snowballed into a lot of other opportunities. Inadvertently, it's also filled my pipeline with people who reach out to me and say, I've seen the work that you've done on MedTech Leading Voice, and I would like to know how we can collaborate, how we can work together, how how you can help me build my business. That's the thing that I wanted from the very beginning. And yet, approaching that head on, that was the last thing that was happening. So that's the reason I share that story, is because when I stopped pitching and started creating a space for others, that's when things shifted. And so it's around this concept of creating room for experts to shine, creating a place where, uh, in a venue that things can happen. Um, I really started to see B2B marketing in a whole different light. Comments, questions before I go on? So what's emerged from this? Well, a huge list of experts that we follow, a weekly publication, lots and lots of new connections. When I reached out to people at notified bodies last week and asked for speakers, also at Fortune 500 companies, actually top 10 medical device manufacturers, and asked for webinar speakers. Both of them said yes immediately. The webinars we produce are well regarded, well attended, and they lead to real conversations for our partners around doing business, because it profiles them in a non-commercial way. But most importantly, because I spend so much time speaking to strangers, helping people, giving advice to people without any expectation of a return, I find that I get new ideas and new opportunities falling into my lap, new collaborators, new partners, And it's not always what I expected or what I wanted, but a lot of times it's better than what I expected and better than what I wanted. Jose, I'm going to ask you to say something because I am just feeling like I'm talking too much.
Good, man.
So this is something Jose and I talked about, and I'm going to let him talk about this, is that the product and service providers didn't have a place. We've talked about this, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Like there's a lot of different places for med tech manufacturers, so medical device manufacturers, whether that be large companies or startups, and a lot of venues that serve them. And sort of the typical model is you've got med tech companies going for some reason. Maybe it's because they're trying to see what's latest and greatest of their startups. Maybe it's because they're trying to raise capital. And then you've got people who are serving those companies, showing up almost as like unwanted guests, you know. But there hasn't been a community that I'd found, at least, where actually those of us who serve the medical devices industry come and share, you know, our experiences, best practices that we've learned, and frankly, like, get to know each other and find a place to provide mutual referrals, which is valuable to everybody. You know, if I love it when I can refer somebody that I know in a particular area where we're not experts to a client, because it provides value to the client. It strengthens the relationship I've got with that other company, and it's kind of like everybody wins. And from my client standpoint, you know, I'm now more valuable to them because I've got a network, you know, so they don't have to go find somebody cold. They can find somebody who maybe I've already interacted with. So yeah, this community that you're building is, I think, extremely valuable.
So before I jump into MLVx and the platform that we launched, I wanted to just tell this story. And this is an analogy that I've been using with a lot of the people that I've been talking to recently. And it's, you know, imagine, Jose, you get bit by the acting bug and you decide to leave the wife and kids and fly out to Hollywood and start your acting career. And then when you get there, you discover that, you know, you also need to become your own movie studio, cameraman, script writer, and every other part of making a movie. So you're not just being asked to be an actor, but you're being asked to, um, well, become a movie studio in your own right. And if you think about it, what's happening right now with medtech product and service providers is that, you know, no matter how small the startup is, no matter how solo the consultant is and how few clients he or she may actually have, the expectation is that they present to the world as if they're a Fortune 500 company and that they compete with Fortune 500 companies for advertising and sponsorships and search engine optimization. And that's really not practical. In fact, I would argue that that is detrimental to um, the expertise itself, the ability to serve the clients. So, you know, Jose talked about, you know, being of service earlier rather than being self-promotional. And I think that if you ask me, what, Sean, what problem are you trying to solve here? That was the problem, is how do we make um, marketing feasible, accessible, um, and practical for these types of companies, for these types of individuals who, you know, I mean, you know, let's assume their annual income is, I don't know, three, $400,000. How much of that needs to go to marketing in order to sustain that, you know? And and how much of that should they be expected to spend? And if, you know, if you missed it, I said I put in the um uh just put in the chat cheat sheet, and I'll give you my minimalist marketing stack cheat sheet. So we're rolling out a new um, program, and the new program is called MedTech Leading Voice Exchange. And my goal today is to enroll a few more of the first 100 founding members. Now, we've enrolled over 30 so far. We're hoping to reach 50. And uh, what that means is if you join MedTech Leading Voice Exchange, you get to speak on one of the Friday calls. You get monthly publishing opportunities in a market-facing publication, which reaches over 10,000 people in the medtech space, primarily in quality and regulatory. And our strategy support, including our growth lab, a trusted referral network, and real opportunities to learn and change the way that you approach marketing. The core principles of the thing are visibility without promotion, meaningful support, shared credibility and audience, and most importantly, this concept of professional transformation. Now, we talk about digital transformation for medtech companies, and we tell them that they need to digitally transform. I'm going to posit an argument right here, and it's just this that the medtech consultants, the product and service providers in this space that don't digitally transform themselves and their way of thinking are going to go by the wayside in the next few years. I think that this market is going to get even more crowded, even more competitive, and standing out is going to become much, much harder. Thoughts, comments, either of you?
You're gonna depress people, man.
You know, I've been thinking about the upside of MLVx, and one of the best things about it in terms of achieving the goals you're looking to achieve. So I studied writing in undergrad and grad school, and as a writer, the two most impactful things that happened in my development in that pathway were a writing retreat I went on, and then the advent of social media. And what MLVx provides is something like a retreat. It's a safe space. It's a place that you can directly workshop and build ideas with other people who really know what they're talking about. And then it also provides, a mechanism for connecting with those people. So I think that it's important to emphasize that the positive upside of MLVx is community building and is going to be a great antidote to this potential negative consequences of all the developments of going away from digital transformation. So I've really enjoyed the connection so far in it, and I think that is really going to be the antidote to this kind of digital transformation problem you're presenting.
What do you mean, Sean, by digital transformation?
When I talk about digital transformation, so what happened to me was, I had brain surgery, right? A couple of years ago, and it didn't go well. There was a huge adverse effect, and it basically I couldn't type afterwards. And so I was forced to embrace other ways of doing my work. And prior to that, I had zero interest in AI. You can ask Dylan. And what I ended up doing was I ended up using the voice recording and the transcription and all of those tools to make AI my biggest ally, and to transform my business processes so that I could become infinitely more productive than I was when I was trying to do all the work myself. That's essentially what I'm referring to is taking advantage of the technologies that are at our disposal, not being afraid of them, embracing change, and preparing for the future.
Got it. Yeah. So it's almost like an AI transformation more than just a digital transformation you're talking about. And I agree with you 100%. I think, it's like the saying that's been going around has been, you're not going to be replaced by AI. You're going to be replaced by somebody who knows how to use AI. And I think that is true. I think AI's now made it where it kind of brings to life the saying like, enough to be dangerous. Like you take somebody who doesn't have expertise and put them in front of a large language model like ChatGPT and have them start having conversation, maybe 95 or 98% of what they get is right, but 2 to 5% is hallucination or just plain old wrong. And that can be devastating if you're doing something critical like medical devices. So what that means is that it's an opportunity for experts to bring a ton of value because they're the ones that can guide, large language model to do things correctly and catch mistakes and catch things that it's doing incorrectly so that it can provide those boundaries. But to put your head in the sand and not become an expert there and learn how to leverage those tools to to drive efficiency, to drive better offerings, all of that, I think is a terrible mistake.
Just to add one more thing, having the unique perspective of worked with Sean first, about 6 years before his AI transformation and 2 years after, I can say that it's been astounding the growth in his capacity as a creative and as a business person as he's integrated this AI into his workflow. We've just seen such amazing progress in what we're trying to do here, and I think it's really a testament to someone who is a skeptic, isn't just someone who's obsessed with technology and the newest things, but then turns around, does the AI transformation, and just levels up really, really effective. So, it worked really well for him. It can work for you too.
So who's this for? I would sum up who's this for with the statement. It's for experts who want to be recognized for their expertise. If a tree falls in the woods and nobody hears it, did it actually fall? If you're a medtech expert and nobody can find you and nobody knows that you're an expert in the thing, then I don't know, it's not really going to work out. Who's this not for? You know, People that don't want to put in any work. If you want it done for you, hire me as a marketer to do it for you. I'm open to that conversation, but this conversation is about the program, and it's about not people who need to keep it all to themselves until it's absolutely perfect, and then share it with the world and get all the recognition. Divas, people who are who aren't open to feedback or collaboration, probably not the right group. It's, have to be kind of open-minded. Um, so what makes it work? This is the idea. We go back to the acting thing, right? We go back to that analogy and we say, so now you've moved to LA and you join a small acting troupe. And the small acting troupe has a stage and it has a theater and it has open mic night and it has opportunities for you to reach an audience that they've assembled for you that's interested in the work that you're doing and allows you the opportunity to perform in front of that audience, to share content with that audience. And we've built that audience for you. If everybody needs to build their own audience in medtech, and everybody needs to build their own newsletter, and everybody needs to build their own podcast, and on and on and on, who has time to listen to all that stuff? So we become a clearinghouse, of 100 experts banding together, curating information, sharing it with the world, sharing resources with the world, and saying, this is how it works. So it's, a structure that's going to allow you to do what you do best. And what does founding membership cost? Well, surprisingly little. Um, in the grand scheme of things, and in the grand scheme of SaaS platforms and marketing sponsorships and trade shows and everything else that goes into your marketing budget, I would say this is probably one of the lowest priced items that there is. And if you use the code Sean 2020 all caps, you will receive 20% off. Um, the other thing is that after we reach 100 members, the price is going up. Not for you, just for the people that join after that. So there's an incentive to join early, join often, bring a friend, and yeah, there we go. So, in summary, this is a human scale platform built for us, by us, to support expert work, not noise. So, I ask you the question, what would change for you if the right people saw what you're great at week after week? And just think about that and think about having a way of reaching an audience that's different from the channels that you have available to you now. Um, I encourage you to think about making your expertise visible, scalable, and trusted. This is the route to attracting high value clients in the post-pandemic era, in the era of AI. It is all about the value that you provide. So this is, and I'm going to open it up to questions. I'm happy to answer any questions. But I would say that if you're interested in joining, please do so. You can go to members.mlvexchange.com. Dylan, if you drop this into the chat.
Um, could you bounce the screen and just stop sharing, because only you can share in chat with the entire group. There you go.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
And maybe while Sean does that, I'll just say quickly that something that I've found. So I've been running my company for 8 years, and one of the things that I found at some point, I kind of went back and looked at my clients and where many of them had come from, and a large number of them had come through referrals from other what I call adjacent service providers, right? So they're service providers to the same clients, but they provide a service that's different. And I think part of the reason is that because these are high impact services that all of us, I think, on this call provide, there's a high level of trust that's required before somebody's willing to essentially trust you with their baby, right? With their company, with their product. So they want to hire people whom they can trust. And the trust level rises very substantially when you learn about a company through somebody else versus through any kind of marketing or online or an email that you get or anything like that. So that's what I love about this community that's being built with MLVx, is that together you're able to help each other substantially. It's like if I go to a potential client and I introduce myself, and then somebody else goes to a potential client, introduce themselves, like the probability that each of us will land that client might be, let's say, 10%. But if I go to a client and I make an introduction to my buddy, and they go to a potential client, they make an introduction to me. So same thing, except we're just introducing people to each other. That percentage just rises substantially because you're building that trust. So, I've learned over time that building relationships with other people in the industry that are also serving medical device manufacturers is almost more valuable than building relationships with potential clients. I mean, that has value too, but building those relationships is just so valuable.
Absolutely agree. I think that really when you surround yourself by experts, it enhances your own expertise in a way that is immeasurable. We have a few questions. What makes you sure LinkedIn is the platform to actually reach the desired contacts in the near future? Um, it's a good question, and I have a love-hate relationship with LinkedIn. Um, LinkedIn is one of the most frustrating platforms in the world. They actually do go out of their way to make it uh, as difficult for their users to understand as they possibly can. That's my personal opinion of the platform. However, it's where everybody is. Okay. And I get asked about, the other social media channels, and I say LinkedIn is not social media. It's a professional networking platform. It's a lot of things, but it is not a social media platform. And then that's one of the reasons that I object to it being infiltrated with social media like content. reels, gimmicky, fast talking, salesy promotions. The other thing is that there's also higher and higher percentage of advertising and a lower reach of your content. So here's the thing. The secret is that if you do a post on LinkedIn and if you don't get 10 likes or comments within the first hour or two, LinkedIn says there's nothing here. Nobody wants to see this. And what they'll do is they'll show it to 200 people. If you put a link in it that goes off platform, they'll show it to 100 people, right? These are actual statistics from people who know, right? And then what happens is if of those 100 or 200 people you don't get 10 likes or comments, then they're going to kill your post and they're going to say there's no interest here. So the workaround is after you create a post, you send it to 10 people and you say, hey, can you drop a like on this if you get a moment, right, or a comment. And by sending it to 10 family members, LinkedIn doesn't care who likes the post, doesn't care if they will show it to 1,000 more people over the next 24 hours. That's how LinkedIn is actually working, right? And so if you know how to use the platform to your advantage, then it's going to help you. But the other thing that MLVx provides is it provides a community to support your posts. It provides you with people who have your back and people who have an interest in seeing you succeed. You know, it's not an engagement pod, which is a whole different topic, but rather a group of people with shared interests who are likely to support you.
So as far as LinkedIn goes, the other thing to take into consideration, especially if you're out of the US, is that LinkedIn is a workaround for GDPR and other privacy laws. If someone joins LinkedIn, they're opting into being communicated with in certain regards that you can't do through the privacy, gatekeeping that takes effect in a lot of the in the EU, especially, and to a lesser extent, California. So LinkedIn is built to be accessible in a way that other methodologies are not. Jose, you looked like you had something you were gonna say earlier. So I
Oh, sure. Just a real quick thing. Sean, you mentioned if 10 of your family members like it, LinkedIn will show it to more people. And that's true, but you're much better served if 10 people in your industry like it. And the reason is that the people that it starts showing it to are the people in the networks of the people who are engaging your post. And so, if your dad's a plumber or something, having him like it and then show it to a bunch of plumbers isn't that helpful because those people aren't going to engage your post. So that's one of the values of building some community in the industry, in the medical device industry that you're in, because those are the people that you want engaging with your post, because then it'll show that to their community who's going to be interested. You're still, if your content isn't good, the post is still going to die anyway, right? It'll get a little bit more lift from let's say friends engaging with it, but it's not gonna go to it's not good. The next level of people are not going to engage with it. So you still have to dedicate the time to making sure that you're providing value. But yeah, having a group of people that you sort of build that relationship with, and you're engaging with their content, they're engaging with yours, is part of what drives reach.
Yeah, it's absolutely a team sport. Um, a next question is, my services are only for one country in the world. Does your um, will your service help me? So I think having a service for only one country in the world um, can be very, very beneficial. Um, you can position yourself as the go-to expert on that topic for that country. And because it's so specific, you can attract people within the country and outside the country who are interested in doing business in that country. I think that is a very important service. It also gives you the opportunity to create English language and native country language content, which is exclusively your own. And I think that is also very helpful. I've been working with a number of clients on creating in-country um, uh, language copies of um, of the information, because people, when they're seeking help, they want to speak with somebody in their native language, generally speaking, and or perhaps are more comfortable. And so I think there is really an opportunity there. Um, no, I mean, Jose, you and I have talked about the Latin American market and the fact that, it's underserved, in by Spanish speaking, um, and Portuguese speaking, um, people, and but there are plenty of people there that are interested in bringing their products to the United States. So, opportunities like that. Um,
Yeah, just
uh,
let's target very, you can build everything out mindfully for the specific country you're building content for. And that'll help you narrow your messaging and make it more effective.
um, let's see. And then the last question that I see is, from someone I know, how might MLV help someone like me who does not develop products or devices or software, but does support those who do? Well, that's exactly the position that I'm in. And our platform has supported me, and my company very nicely. I would say that you actually have an advantage over um, all of the regulatory and quality experts who have trouble distinguishing themselves in the audience. Um, Whereas you're saying, I provide this service to medtech product and service providers in need of it. I think that again is a unique selling point. One of the things that I stress over and over again is pick something that you want to be known for. It may not be everything that you do, but it should, on the restaurant show, they talk about every restaurant needs a signature dish. What is your signature dish? What is the thing that you do better than anybody else? And try to make a name for yourself for just that, rather than trying to say, oh, I offer full quality and regulatory services in the US, the EU, Canada, Ireland, and Northern Ireland, or in the UK, right? So, I mean, when you tell people that you do everything, they wonder what you're good at. Um, yeah, Jose, thoughts?
No, I'm a huge fan. Even though I'm an engineer and I work with you guys, for years I've tried to study branding and marketing, and you know you can't do it all, right? So you need partners to help, but you should try to understand it a little bit. And one of the things that got seared into my mind is just in branding, like you want to be one of the top people. And so if you're coming into something that's very broad, it's almost impossible to be one of the top people. But if you narrow down like your particular niche in your area of expertise, then it's not so hard to become one of the top people. And to the question that somebody had around LinkedIn, you know, I think it's something like 1 or 2% of LinkedIn people in LinkedIn actually post. And out of those people, it's probably only 5 to 10% that post things that are actually helpful. So there's a lot of opportunity to carve out a niche. I think of somebody that I think, Sean, you might have introduced me to him, or I learned about him through Leading Voices. Like I think you pronounce his name Georg Deagle or something, like it looks like George Deigel or something from Germany, but he writes about kappas, right? And you think kappa, like how boring a topic could you? Okay, I'm sorry to the regulatory people on the call, right? But to your average person, you think of kappas, and it's not like the most invigorating, exciting topic, and yet he's become the kappa guy, and he'll get 500, 800 likes to some of his posts because he puts time into it and does really good content, and so he's carved out a niche within LinkedIn, but he probably would not have been able to do that. So that's the weird it's the paradox, right? You think, well, if I go after a much broader audience, there's a lot more people, so I'll get more engagement. But it turns out you actually get less. You'll get more engagement if you narrow down and you make really good content for a particular niche. Like I post about cybersecurity and medical devices. It's kind of a nichey thing, but over time I've gotten better at creating the posts and stuff, and I'll get regularly 30, 40, 50,000 impressions. Recently I got one with 85,000 impressions, because over time also the audience with whom your message resonates becomes more and more familiar with who you are, and LinkedIn starts showing them that content more. So you get that snowball effect.
That's great. There are a couple more comments. This question is a little off topic, but let's hit it anyhow. How do you see AI creating QMS documents, QPs, and technical files from A to Z? Well, I think it's going to have a way to go. I think that it can assist. I think that it will definitely be a huge time saver, and I think that we're going to see a lot happening in that digital transformation space within companies. And I think that ultimately that's going to lead to a downsizing in the number of regulatory professionals required to do this work, simply because so much of what's happening right now is very cut and paste oriented and time consuming, and manual processes, siloed content. I think that when and if the medical device industry ever gets its act together and embraces AI and embraces these tools, that we're going to see that change. Jose?
We have 1 minute left. Did you want to jump to the next question or
Okay,
finish?
the last question that I have is, my experience is that people who one has worked with in the past refer you to somebody in their network. This generally takes a lot of time and patience. Does this platform emulate that, or and how does it do this? I think what it does is it makes you a member of a community where you have the opportunity to distinguish yourself, to make connections with others, and to expedite the referrals that might be coming your way by becoming the clear voice in whatever area of expertise you're staking out for yourself. I think again it comes down to, are you able to differentiate yourself from the rest of the audience?